right. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to a special edition of the Commanders Film Room. I'm here today with my co-host, Mark Bullock. Mark, how you doing today?
Yeah, pretty good. It's nice to be at more of a normal time for us here in Europe, as opposed to for you guys in the evening. It's a little bit different, but yeah, we're doing pretty well.
Yeah, so thank you for that. Mark obviously is over in Europe. He has that 5-hour, 6-hour time exchange, so he's always grinding that film for us late at night. So it's good to reimburse the favor and be here early in the morning for him today. So Mark, we're about a week or two removed from the NFL draft. I feel like Washington walked away with a pretty good haul, but it might not necessarily been the haul that everyone expected. We maybe anticipated maybe an edge in the first round, but we got an offensive lineman who we broke down last week, and now we have a cornerback in the second round. Now that you started to look more and more into the film, what are your initial takeaways of the Washington's haul in the draft class?
Yeah, I think that when they decided that they were going to take Connolly and not trade back, and Amos and not trade back, and kind of Adam Peters kind of admitted after that day 2 presser, he said, like, I think that was kind of our opportunities to trade back gone, and the value kind of disappears in day 3. And so it kind of became like, okay, this was just going to be a 5-man draft class. So that always kind of feels like it's lacking a little bit, but I think the guys that they got are good. And I think the solidifying the offensive line, I was coming more and more towards it when we were building up to the draft, and the more I thought about it, the more I thought actually we can get a stud tackle, a right tackle. It would be a really good move. And I've kind of always said that I feel like corner was just as big a need, if not a bigger need, than a defensive end, because this team can manufacture a pass rush. They just need the coverage on the back end to hold up. So yeah, I felt like they got really good value. Certainly Amos at 61, as we're about to talk about, I think he's terrific value there. And I think, I'm sure we'll break down some of the day 3 picks in more detail at another time, but I think they got some pretty good players there as well. So it's maybe a smaller class than they would have liked, but I think in terms of value of the players that they got, they should be pretty happy with.
I agree. I think Washington went into the draft kind of exploring all options. I think they did a great job with free agency and building up a pretty high floor, like getting pretty, Will Harris, Jonathan Jones, Javon Kinlaw. They're basically building up little small holes in the roster to ensure they were safe going into the draft. I think if all things were a dream, they would have potentially traded back and got some more selections. But I think Connolly and Amos sitting there at the selected spots were too good to pass up. Connolly's we broke him down last week. I think he looks like a fantastic prospect. And after you go past Connolly, the left tackles kind of fall off the shelf, right? There really aren't that many afterwards. And Amos, he seems like a perfect fit. Like, we kind of dipped our toe into breaking him down about 2 weeks ago. But now I think we're going to go more into detail now. I guess before we pivot into our film work, Mark, just a quick 1 or 2 sentence summary. Do you still feel confident that Amos is a good fit here in DC?
Yeah, I think he's a really good fit. I kind of tried to portray last time that he's a really well-rounded player. So he could kind of fit a lot of different schemes. But what I'll try to show today is that he can fit a lot of schemes that specifically Washington runs. And so, yeah, I think he's a really good fit. And I really like the pick.
Absolutely. All right, without further ado, we're going to jump into our film work. That's what you guys are here for today. Shameless plug, guys. Definitely follow Mark and I on X. We have all this content every single week. We're working on producing great work for you. We are the Big Doug and Carmi Show on YouTube. Please like and subscribe for us. That's completely free. Mark also has some great content on his Substack, so you guys should definitely subscribe and follow along with that. And Mark Bullock's handle is Mark Bullock NFL at X. So without further ado, Mark, I'm going to throw the mic over to you. We're going to post some questions. We're looking at Trey Amos. Let's give it a whirl.
Cool. So the first thing to talk about with Trey Amos, and I showed this clip last time, but it's a really good clip to show what kind of profile he kind of portrays. When you first just look at, search his name and you find he's 6'1", he's 195 pounds, nearly 200 pounds. He's got 31-inch arms. And you think it's a big, long, physical press corner. And he can certainly do that. And this play shows just how well he can do that. We've got him down the bottom here. isolated to the left formation against this receiver, just trying to run a slant. I think it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7, something like that. And they're trying to run a quick slant to convert and move the chains. But Amos takes that away, and we see him up in press coverage, and we see him get real physical up at the line of scrimmage. You can see straight away he opens his hips, and I talked about it last time, and I'll probably talk about it a little bit more later on. His feet aren't as patient as I'd like them to be in press coverage. You'd like him to be a little bit more patient with his feet, stay square at the line of scrimmage, force the receiver to declare, and then open your hips. But that receiver took one jab step outside and is looking to get inside. And you can see Amos reacts a little bit to it, and opens up a little bit more than you'd like. But he's playing with such heavy inside leverage that he kind of gets away with it. And the receiver's trying to work inside to him, and you can see he's kind of taking that away. And this is where he starts to get physical. He uses those long arms to engage. He uses his big frame to really cut off that inside path, be physical, as I talked about. We talk about 195 pounds. When you talk about offensive linemen, that's nothing. But when you're talking about a corner against a receiver, that's a sort of lot of weight to be able to throw around. And he uses that frame and that physicality here to kind of stop that path inside, stays inside of him, takes it away. You can see the quarterback's already looked away. He's already gone, yeah, that route's dead. I'm looking elsewhere. But he keeps being physical. The receiver tries to adjust rather than try to cut underneath him. He tries to go over the top. But Amos stays inside, maintains his inside leverage, keeps being physical. This is all still within 5 yards of the line of scrimmage, so he's still allowed to be that physical. And then the quarterback has had to hold on to the ball because his first option wasn't there, and he's having to scramble. Now the receiver does end up seeing that his quarterback scrambles and breaks away late, but by that point the quarterback's getting caught and sacked. So so it was a good rep overall by Amos, and I think it just shows the physicality that he can play with. If you want him to be that physical man press corner, he can develop into that. As I say, there's still some traits that, like with his feet, you'd want him to be a little bit more patient. But I think there's certain that the traits are all there for him to develop into that. But I think specifically for Washington, he can do a lot more. When you think about Dan Quinn, what Dan Quinn was known for when he first got a head coaching job was being part of that Seahawks cover 3 defense, where they played cover 3, but it wasn't a spot drop cover 3. And for people that don't know, a spot drop cover 3 would be, if you're playing cover 3, this outside corner would be responsible for a deep outside third. And so he would just drop to his spot without regard for what the receiver's doing, and he would just eye the quarterback and probably be looking at what routes might be a threat to him, but he would be dropping to a particular spot, which would probably be 15, 20 yards down the field as the deep outside third guy. But the Seattle version of cover 3 was they'd have their corners play up and in press coverage and be physical with receivers at the line of scrimmage, disrupt them, and then peel off if necessary to play their zones. But and this is a real good example of it. This Ole Miss are using that kind of cover 3 technique here, especially with Amos. It's a play action pass from Georgia, so there's just one wide receiver out here, and Amos is up in press coverage. And again, you can see that willingness to be physical. You can see a little bit more patience with the feet, not lunging at the guy and staying square in front of him, keeping the play in front of him. Once the receiver declares he's going inside, that's when Amos goes and gets physical, gets his hands on him. That's a lot better technique. You just want to see it a little bit more consistently, and maybe even more patient at the line of scrimmage rather than dropping back, forcing that declaration a little bit earlier. But even so, this is not bad. He gets his hands on him. He's physical, and you can see he's constantly jabbing with that inside hand to kind of force that receiver further inside than he wants to, but he's staying on top of the route the whole way. He's able to play with vision, so he's able to see if there's any other threats. And you can see he's playing part of cover 3. You can see the other defenders. You've got the outside corner on the deep outside there. You got the middle safety in the deep middle, and then you got your 1, 2, 3, and then this other safety is dropping in to play the flat on this side. So you've got your cover 3 components, but there's no threats to his zone at this point. So he can stay in press on this receiver, and he keeps pressing him, keeps jabbing physically, keeps staying on top of the route. So he's taking away any sort of vertical threat. and he's staying tight to him in case he tries to break over the middle, like you often see on play action passes. And he stays on top of the route, stays with it the whole way. The receiver ends up trying to run a curl route. This safety tries to match it, so he undercuts it as well. So they get good coverage all around, taking away that route. But for Amos specifically, it's a real nice rep of being able to play that kind of cover three, but press technique in cover three.
And Mark, a couple questions for it whenever you're ready. So I guess just further clarification for those of us watching, even myself, in regard to press coverage, in regard to adding pressure to the wide receiver, you talked about patience. You talked about what you want a cornerback to look like. So when I'm watching like an ideal rep, are you looking for someone to kind of receive the wide receiver, be parallel with the quarterback, and have his eyes back? Is that what you're looking for? Because the first rep, he was kind of at diagonal, kind of losing his position. But so that's kind of one thing I'm curious about.
So it depends on the technique you're playing and how physical you're trying to be at the line of scrimmage. If you're just trying to disrupt a route completely like he was on that first play, it's not as important to stay as patient. You're trying to be really disruptive, especially on a short, quicker route like that. On a play like this, where it's a deeper route, if we wind it back, you want to see him be more patient, and you see him be patient. He's not like lunging towards the receiver and trying to like disrupt him at the line. You want him to be patient, but when I say patient, keep still. He doesn't need to give ground. He can hold his position here. He's kind of square on with the receiver. He's not playing huge inside or huge outside leverage. He's staying pretty square to the receiver. And so what you'd like to see him do is, as we get to see here, he's taking steps already, and he naturally wants to drop back. I'd like to see him just hold his position, force this receiver to kind of declare, am I going outside? Am I going inside? And eventually, but by staying square here, he does get the receiver to declare that, but he gives ground and lets the receiver get down the field a little bit more. So that gives the receiver a chance to give a little bit more of a jab step and try to fake one way or the other. Whereas if he had just held his position, this was where he started, right? So that receiver wouldn't be able to get to this point because Amos would have been there. And he would have had to have declared his route inside, and that's when Amos can get his hands on and be physical. And this is the part where you'd like it. If this happened like 2 or 3 yards further up the field, it would be a really, really good rep. By staying patient, staying square, forcing that declaration of that route, then getting your hands on, and you can just see the constant jabbing with his inside arm on that inside shoulder, forcing that defender back. Forcing that receiver back, forcing him inside off of the path that he wants to go. And when you're talking about a curl route off of a play action, you're wanting to be more outside the numbers, and he's forced him almost in towards the hash marks. So he's disrupted the route. He's done a really nice job, and that's come from being patient rather than lunging at the line of scrimmage. So, but yeah, that was an example of him playing that kind of press cover 3 technique that you saw the Seahawks used to do under Dan Quinn. This is another example of cover 3. He's not quite pressing, but he's still playing cover 3, and you can see he just bails off the snap at the snap, but he still plays kind of a half man, half zone kind of thing. Again, you can see we've got a deep outside third defender, deep middle, another corner deep outside third, and then you've got your 1, 2, 3, 4 defenders dropping into cover 3. So it is cover 3, which is why he's bailed off, but he's still matching the receiver. And you can see when he's got the depth, he can see a little bit wider. You can see there's no other real threats to his zone. So you can kind of attach to this receiver. They also have a lot of cover 3 teams will have this rule where this flat guy, that when he turns into a wheel route, this the flat defender will match that route and stay with it down the field. So that allows this corner to attach to this receiver, which is what he does. Stays real tight, pretty damn good coverage. Like he's right there. The quarterback throws a real good anticipation, like the ball's out already at this point, and he places this outside away from where Amos is. So it's just a really good throw and catch.
Great throw.
And you can't really do a hell of a lot about that as a defender, but the coverage rep itself was really good. So that's just to show that Washington still plays quite a bit of cover 3 under Dan Quinn. It's nowhere near the extent that they played in Seattle. And Dan Quinn, one of the things he talked about when he became the head coach of Washington was how teams had caught up with the cover 3 press stuff that they did in Seattle, and by the time he was in Atlanta, and by the time he's finished with the Falcons, he admitted that teams had caught up and they knew how to beat that, and so they had to change. And in Dallas, what they did was started to play a lot more man coverage, and rather than playing up on the line of scrimmage and being real physical, they play off and attack underneath routes. So this is an example here. This is Stephon Gilmore against the Lions from 2023. This was Dan Quinn's last year in Dallas. And then you've just got a quick out route here. But Stephon Gilmore, you'll see how aggressive he is in jumping this out route from an off coverage position. You can see the quarterback has only just started to begin his windup, like he's just tapped the ball and is beginning to pull the ball away. But Gilmore is already coming out of his break, and you can see that he's reading the wide receiver's route. He can see through the receiver to the quarterback. He knows this ball is coming on a quick out underneath. He is driving on it the whole way from that off coverage. By being off, with being able to play with vision, he's able to see, as I said, the receiver and the quarterback. He drives on the route early, and he gets there almost too early, makes contact, doesn't get called, but ideally you'd like to see him just undercut it, intercept it, but he gets there, breaks up the pass.
So Mark, real quick, I want to add on to this real fast. So first of all, compliment to you. I love doing film work with you. You do a great job about making things practical and showing that symmetry there. I love the application to the pro game so we can kind of see it on a new level. So thank you for doing that. And I love this. I do think it sounds kind of counterintuitive, but it's so true, right? Like playing off coverage, like, oh, that's not necessarily that aggressive, but in a way it really is, because it allows your athletes to be better athletes, right? Kind of watch the quarterback and react. And we saw so many turnovers in Dallas the past couple of years with Dan Quinn as our defensive coordinator. So I'm excited to see it in DC.
Yeah, for sure. And it was something that, so we just saw it from Dallas DBs when Quinn was there, and it was something that Dan Quinn and Joe Witt brought to Washington, and we were a little bit unsure exactly what kind of style they would try to play. This was week 1 against the Bucks, so this is what they ideally wanted to do, and we saw them have to go away from it a little bit because of the secondary that they had, and the guys didn't quite hold up. But this is the exact same type of thing. You got Benjamin St-Juste down here playing off with vision against an out route, against an isolated receiver, and St-Juste does the same thing. He's playing off. He can play with vision through the receiver to the quarterback. He doesn't kind of opens himself up more to the sideline than you'd like, and he kind of focuses more on the receiver than the quarterback. But again, he makes a nice early break. You can see as soon as that receiver starts to make that cut outside, the quarterback hasn't begun his throwing motion. He's already breaking on the route, and he's going to be positioning himself to undercut it perfectly. And you see it. Ball's out now. He's basically running this route for the receiver at this point. He undercuts it, and at this point, he should be intercepting this ball and taking it back the other way. Unfortunately, he doesn't have good hands, and he drops it. But that shows the kind of rep that they're looking for from off coverage. The kind of rep, the kind of technique they want to be able to play top down on everything and drive down on everything. Now, this is Trey Amos in that same Florida game where we saw him up and playing press. This time it's 3rd and 6, 3rd and 7. And this time he's playing off. He's playing inside leverage. And the receiver's not running an out route. He's running a slant, but it's still a quick breaking underneath route. And you see the same type of idea here where he plays off. He has a vision of both the receiver and the quarterback. And you can see that here. He checks the receiver. He checks the quarterback. As soon as that receiver starts breaking inside, you can see he's starting to plant and drive on the route. He's playing. You can see he's watching just the quarterback at this point. He's feeling where the receiver is, and he's just watching the quarterback for the throw. And as soon as that quarterback starts that throwing motion, he's driving on the route, and then he's willing to be physical at the catch point, go in and break up that pass. So that's the exact kind of technique that we were just looking at with first Gilmore and Dallas under Quinn, and then St-Juste last year under Quinn. And so that's the kind of playing off and driving down on quick underneath routes and trying to contest catches at the catch point, and potentially intercept some stuff. So though we've seen now he can play physical press coverage if you want him up at the line of scrimmage. He can play the kind of cover 3 Seattle cover 3 stuff if they wanted to implement some of that, or if you want to play the more recent Dan Quinn, Joe Witt hybrid where they're playing off and with vision, but it's still man coverage. He can do that as well. So that was some of the different schematic things that you like to see from how he might fit in Washington. maybe some more traitsy kind of stuff. If we want to look at some traits,
Absolutely.
so the one of the things that they prioritize in Washington with Quinn and Witt is getting their hands on the ball, getting their hands in at the catch point, playing through the catch point. And this was a nice rep of that from Mikey Samerstill. Even if you're behind, you can still work to get in at the catch point and break up passes. So this was oddly enough against Dallas. You got a big deep dig in here, and Samerstill's playing off. And you can see Samerstill gets kind of beat inside. He kind of allows this guy to get inside of him, and you don't necessarily want him, when he plays with that much inside leverage, he wants to be using his body to cut that off, but he allows the receiver inside, and he gets a little bit behind, and that's why you can see the ball is out at this point, and it's coming to that receiver. But he's able to make up ground, undercut the route, and you'll see it from the end zone angle better, where he's able to undercut and get his hand in. Now he's helped a little bit. This throw is just slightly behind the receiver, but he's able to get his hand in at the catch point and break up that pass. So you're playing through the receiver's hands. You have the ball skills to kind of locate the ball and read where the receiver's hands are and get your hands in at the catch point and break up the pass.
One thing I want to ask you whenever you're ready.
Yeah, go for it.
So I'm really happy with Mike Sanderson. Obviously, we love having him as our outside corner, and it's just so fun watching these fundamentally sound like players, right? Mikey Sanders still has the work ethic and he has like the demeanor, but he also is just technically sound. I think the narrative now is Mikey Sanders still might move inside for the slot. Like I think that might be a better position for him. I guess I'm curious. It's hard to predict in May, Mark, but like, do you think are they going to be able to balance each other out with Mikey Sanders still going on the inside and Amos going on the outside? Is that how you see it playing out in your opinion?
That's how I think it will play out, probably.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I guess the only question to that would be if Marshall Lattimore gets injured, or comes to training camp and doesn't look like the same Marshall Lattimore that they were hoping for. Then maybe you talk about keeping Sammer still outside and Amos outside, and put Jonathan Jones in the slot. They do have some flexibility with that.
Noah Iguodamine as well.
Noah Iguodamine can play in there as well, obviously, and did quite well last year and is an improving player. So they do have some options that they can put in there. But I think the way they'll be thinking about it now is Sammer still back into the slot, Amos outside with Lattimore.
Did you catch Amos in any of the film studies going inside by any means? Was he ever a slot receiver? It's more of a boundary guy.
Not really. Sometimes you saw if it was a 3-by-1 set with the guy on the backside being a tight end, so it was 3 receivers and the tight end on one side, and he'd be in the slot with the third receiver. But you see that with a lot of different corners that are typically outside corners. If it's 3 receivers on one side and the tight end on the other, if you're playing man coverage, you kind of have to go inside. In terms of like in a 2-by-2 or just a normal formation, not really. I didn't come across him in the slot.
Okay.
So, where were we? Sammer still showed a nice example of being able to undercut a route and play through the hands. This is a good example of the same kind of technique from Amos. We've got South Carolina, I think, here running a play action pass, and it's a deep dig from this backside receiver. He's going to be isolated, and I think they're going to run a cover 3 again. I think that's how it plays out. Is they do end up running cover 3. The safety rotates down and plays the flat, and you get 4 underneath, 3 deep. And Amos is meant to be the deep outside third defender. But what he can see is the slot receiver has worked across on a jet sweep motion and is turning it into a wheel. The tight end was on the far side and is staying into block. The running back was running a play action fake and is working out to the far side. That means there is no other threat to Amos's outside zone here, which means he can effectively turn this into man coverage. And so he can, as I say, he reads that there's no receiver on this side of the field that's a threat to coming over him, so he can just isolate on this receiver. And you can see he kind of runs this dig route in a cover 3 scheme typically, or in a kind of fire zone scheme typically, any sort of 3 deep scheme. He'd be responsible for this outside third, and he would pass this route off to the middle safety. You can see the middle safety was kind of more worried about the multiple receivers going to this side of the field. So Amos knows that he can kind of just stick to this receiver as he runs this dig route over the middle. And again, he's a little bit behind, kind of like what we saw with Sammer still just a minute ago. He's a little bit behind, but he has the recoverability, and he can kind of undercut this route. And you can see he gets his hand in at that catch point, as we just talked about, plays through the hands of the receiver and ends up breaking the pass up. I think I've got the end zone angle of this one in here as well. Yeah. So you can see, again, the same kind of thing that we just saw from San Still, the same technique that they want to play with. That ball's out here coming to that dig route. And you can see he's able to just use his size and his length to help him recover, gets his hand right in at that catch point, doesn't give up on the play, even though the receiver gets his hands on the ball. He just still rips through with his hand, knocks it out, forces it incomplete.
It's funny though, like I know we're watching Trey Amos in that play, but I don't know what the quarterback's thinking, because there's 4 Ole Miss defensive backs are converging on the wide receiver. He would have been dead if he caught it anyway, but it's a good play.
Yeah, and this is the same kind of thing from later in the game. I think it's even kind of the same play from the offense. And yeah, you see that receiver going in motion, running into that jet sweep, and it's the same idea where that guy's going to run that deep dig, and this time he opts against it. You can see that Amos, having seen this route once and the entire play once before, is in a much better position. He's on top of the route and ready to kind of drive over the top of it rather than undercut. And that quarterback kind of recognizes, okay, that route is dead. If I throw that, Amos might pick that, not just break it up. So he ends up this guy tips it. He still throws it, but the underneath guy tips it. But Amos, you'll see, actually was in a great position to intercept that pass if the underneath coverage hadn't tipped it. Yeah, you can see the underneath guy tips this pass here, but Amos is right there ready to drive on this and contest that. And you can see he's in that position again to play through the hands of the receiver and potentially even intercept that pass. So just again showing that same kind of technique that we saw from San Still, the way that they want their corners to play in Washington is play through the hands of the receiver and being able to get their hands on the ball. So that's one kind of traitsy thing. Another traitsy thing that you see with Amos is just his instincts in coverage. And this is why I said that he does profile as a big physical man coverage corner, but I actually like him more in zone because he's got such good instincts. He can kind of cheat a little bit and help other players when he knows he's freed up to do that. So what we're going to see here, I think this is some sort of quarters coverage from Ole Miss, where this safety is helping Amos bracket this outside receiver as he runs this post route, and they're running a play action pass with the running back faking a handoff and then turning that handoff into a wheel route. And they get this linebacker matched up on trying to cover him down the sideline. But we'll get into the play and we'll show you why this is such a good play from Amos. So at this point, Amos is focusing purely on this receiver running down the field. He's got this safety inside ready to help him with the bracket, so he can play outside leverage as his outside quarter. And we'll see it. Yeah, here we go. I did draw it. So you got the safety ready to take over that post route, and Amos is actually peeking back into the quarterback, and you can see that quarterback is looking outside of him, so he knows that there is some sort of threat outside. I don't think he can tell that the running back is there and running there, but he can tell that there is some sort of threat outside because he's peeking back at the quarterback. You can see that the quarterback is looking out here, not at this receiver, and he knows that he's got this safety help here and they're bracketing this receiver. So if the quarterback's thinking this receiver, it's stupid. So he's giving the quarterback some credit and knowing that he's going out here. So what he does is he knows, okay, this guy's running a post route and I've got my safety with inside leverage ready to take that on. So I can peel off and work back outside to whatever's going on out here. I don't think he knows what's happening out here, but he knows there's something out here because
you can feel it.
He's back inside and he can see that quarterback looking out there. So he peels off, turns around, and he can suddenly see the picture emerging. You can see that there's a running back there that's looking for the ball, and you can see he's now turned and trying to locate the ball himself. And he's got really good ball skills. He's really good at locating the ball in the air and playing the ball in the air, which is another trait that you like to see from, especially in this defense where they want guys that can make plays on the ball. But he peels back out. He does actually catch the pass. He doesn't get his feet in bounds, so it's not an interception. But it was a really good read, a fantastic read, and that's why I talk about his instincts. Being a guy that plays off or in zone, he has the instincts to feel that the ball might be going elsewhere, and he knows where his help is. Like he knew that safety was ready to take on that post route, so he can peel off and help. So That could have easily been an interception if he got his feet down, but at very least he prevented what could have been a touchdown because that linebacker had been beat.
That was a fantastic play. And I think I'm glad you're reiterating this. I remember when we watched film about a week or two ago, my takeaway was he's actually a pretty good zone cover. He's a pretty good match corner where he has his eyes in the backfield and he makes plays athletically. When you read any formal draft script, it's always talking about press coverage and being really physical. So I guess he does offer both of those components. But my initial takeaway was I thought he's a pretty good zone cover corner.
Yeah, very, very good in zone. And this is what the appeal to him is for me, is that he's so well-rounded. And you could develop him any way you like. If they want to just go heavy man coverage, they can do that. They can say, right, okay, we're just going to help you develop into this big physical press corner. And he has the profile for that. And we've seen that. But if they want to be able to mix things up, as we talked about, if they want to go to that Seattle cover 3 and mix that in, he can do that. If they want to play quarters, we just saw he was really good there. If they want to play any kind of zone, he's got really good instincts, and we'll see some more here. This is more plays on the instincts kind of thing. He just kind of runs this route for the receiver. This receiver runs a deep dig. They've got these two guys kind of clearing out as kind of a dagger concept, and they're trying to run that deep dig to him. But this was just a really nice rep. He bails off, so he's playing kind of a zone, and you've seen that playing off with vision can peek at the receiver and see where that receiver's going, but can also peek into the backfield and also peek at the other receivers and see what exactly they're trying to do, what kind of route combination they're running. And when you see these guys running vertically and across the field, he probably figures out pretty easily that they're running some sort of dagger concept. These guys are designed to take these safeties away and vacate that middle of the field for this receiver to run that dagger route or that dig route into the middle. And you can see before that receiver's even broken inside, you can see Amos has already started his break inside. He's already peeking to the quarterback, looking to see if he's trying to throw that dig route there. And he kind of takes that route away, runs it for the receiver, and he's right there. And the quarterback ends up throwing the deep ball instead because the safety gets a little bit out of position. But the coverage from Amos, again, just the instincts, being able to play from off with vision, he can see a lot more, and you can see that he understands a wider concept rather than just, oh, this is my receiver and I just have to focus on him. You can see that he could read and understand the other routes and from those other routes interpret what his receiver was likely to do and would put himself in a position to take that away before the receiver even ran his route. So that was just to show the instincts. I think I showed this play the other week because this is basically the main highlight play that everyone talks about with Amos, but it shows the zone and the instincts that he has in zone coverage. So this is that South Carolina game again. He's got a bracket with the safety again, and this guy's running kind of what you would call an end line route, where in the red zone you're looking to get to the back of the end zone and run along the end line of the end zone. And Amos plays outside leverage, and he's trying to obviously guard the receiver, but when we get to the top of the route, you'll see he understands he's got that safety help again, like we talked about before. He gets this off coverage where he's playing with vision, and he's peeking into the backfield, but also peeking at other routes from the other side of the field and seeing if there's going to be any threat to him underneath, because he knows he's got this safety here playing inside leverage. If this receiver breaks inside, he knows he can just pass that off to the safety and he can peel off. So we'll see that here. You can see that receiver's going inside. He's got that safety with inside leverage, so he can pass that route off and he can peel off and sees this receiver running a shallow cross underneath. And he can see his teammate is struggling a little bit, and he can just peel off and drive down and take on that route. Now, the quarterback still attempts to throw, and we'll see that here. Quarterback scrambles out and attempts that throw, and Amos is there to intercept the pass.
Great play.
Fantastic play, yeah. And we'll just see it from the end zone angle just to see the ball skills. You can see here he sees that receiver as a threat, drives on the route, locates the ball, intercepts the pass. Great play, takes points off the board. They were in field goal range. So huge interception down in the red zone. Fantastic play.
One thing, I was going to say, I'm very impressed by him so far. I love his instincts where he seems to have some sort of, like, for lack of a better word, spider sense feel for where people are going to be in regard to the zone. I do like that. And it's kind of stands out to me as well. As looking at film, he's 6'1", 195, and you hear that, and you don't think it's necessarily big or demeaning. But if you look at it on the field, like it's pretty intimidating compared to the wide receivers. The other wide receivers are 5'8", 5'10". He has that physicality with him as well.
Yeah, and like if you just think about Washington's set of receivers, like we do talk about Washington needing more height in their receiving room, but like Terry McLaurin is what 6'1", Devo's
something like that.
6 foot. That Jalen Lane now is 5'10", and they've constantly had receivers that are all smaller. And a lot of teams are like that. Like everyone would love to have Julio Jones being 6'4", 200 pounds, 220 pounds, but those guys don't come around very often. Your average receiver is probably 6 foot, 6'1" kind of thing. So a corner being 6'1", 200 pounds ish is pretty big, pretty physical. So yeah, and I think, as you say, we kind of get thrown off about it because you talk about offensive linemen and defensive linemen that are 6'5", 300 pounds. But so it kind of misleads you a little bit. But for a corner, it's big, long, physical profile. So he's such a well-rounded profile. And if you want him to play man, he can play man. If you want him to play zone, he can play zone. And as we're about to see here, he can do some of the match stuff and some of the zone passing off stuff. So if you wanted to get into more complex coverages where you're passing off routes and picking up different routes, he's capable of doing that too. So we'll see that here. We're running another. He's in zone. He's the outside corner here, but this receiver is going to go in motion before the snap. So he's going to shuffle inside and end up taking on this receiver. And they're going to run basically a very common play action stuff where you see this receiver running a deep post to try to clear out a deep safety. And then you run this kind of crossing route over the middle underneath it to try to, this safety gets cleared out by the post and you try to hit this route underneath it. And you've got this wheel route as a kind of added on thing. It's a nice add-on, but this is the main core of the concept. So we'll see it here. Goes in motion. Amos makes a signal, picks up the outside receiver, starts running across with him towards the middle of the field. But what they do really nicely here is a real nice zone pass off. So you can play this concept. This is a very common, as I say, very common play action concept. You can play this kind of two ways. Either the safety stays deep and protects that deep post route, and you just trust this corner to take this on. Occasionally you can have this corner try to peel off, but that's trusting a safety one-on-one deep. You don't necessarily want to do that. The more common way to do it is you have this safety with inside leverage drive on this crossing route, and then you have the corner peel off and replace the safety deep. And that's what they do here. So they have that combination and installed for this concept specifically. And you can see the safety drives. He's got inside leverage on that crossing route, which takes that crossing route away. The quarterback kind of is looking at this and he thinks for a moment, maybe I can hit this deep post over the top of the safety. But you can see Amos is peeling back and replacing that safety. The corner does a nice job on this side, staying on top of it, and Amos is able to bracket that safety and take away that option as well, which forces the quarterback to then take this check down underneath. So it's a really nice job zone passing off and replacing the safety taking away his route, and they essentially get 3/2 in one way or another, and they match up nicely, and they take away both routes. So that just sound conceptual working together, right? You can just tell that he has a feel for the game, and it's done in live, real time, right? You're doing that full speed. You have to react, and it's almost like basketball, like passing off a defender, kind of working with your exactly.
It's actually very impressive there.
Exactly. So that would be a form of kind of zone matching, passing off kind of stuff. In Dallas with Dan Quinn, we'll go back to Dallas and Dan Quinn. They wanted to play. They've obviously played a lot of more man coverage. We talked about Quinn getting away from the cover 3 stuff, and his change up to that was playing more man coverage. And as he developed in Dallas and as the DBs got used to him and built trust in the scheme, they started to use a lot more man match. And so this is an example of that. So we see there's a lot going on the screen here, but just stick with me. You've got essentially 5 eligible receivers. You got 1, 2, 3, 4, and you got the running back as the 5th guy. And you can see they've all got man-to-man guys assigned to them, right? And you've got the deep safety in the middle of the field, and you've got this linebacker that's free that I think joins the rush, if I remember rightly. But if you're playing man-to-man and you get like this route here, this receiver goes in motion just before the snap and then runs a shallow cross. That's really, really hard for this corner to stay with. Now, you could keep a linebacker in the middle of the field like this one here and pick it up and help pick that up as a plugger. But if they want to blitz him, then you have to do some sort of man matching thing to avoid this receiver just running away from that corner. And so what we'll see as we go in motion and run the play off, you can see these corners switch up what they're doing. He suddenly bails back deep. He suddenly comes up to play press. And what you get is a real switch of everyone's
responsibility
assignments.
Mm-hmm.
So initially it was this guy on this tight end, this linebacker on the running back, and this corner on this receiver. But what ends up happening is they all switch assignments. They match the coverage based on their leverage. So this receiver runs a shallow cross, which means this linebacker, rather than trying to work out to the running back, just stays where he is and drives down and takes away that shallow cross with inside leverage. That means that this corner, this safety, the slot corner, has to then work out to the flat to maintain the outside leverage on the running back. So he takes that one, and that leaves this outside corner that was initially covering this route to bail off and play deep and cover the tight end. And so they match it up real nicely. And you can see they've got pretty good coverage across the board, and they get a nice pressure as well with the linebacker that blitzed, and the quarterback takes a hit and tries to throw something and it goes incomplete. So that was one example of how Dan Quinn used man match coverage in Dallas. In Washington, they tried to do it early in the year, and they really struggled because they didn't have the DBs for it. This was the playoff game against the Lions, so a lot later in the year when Lattimore had come aboard and they established kind of Sam was still playing outside, Igbenogany in the slot, they'd had a lot more stability. They started to play a little bit more. So you can see at this point at the snap, you've got Lattimore playing man coverage on this receiver. You've got one of the safeties, I think it's Quan Martin, playing man coverage on this tight end. And you've got Bobby Wagner playing that plugger. As I talked about, if one way to deal with crossers is in man coverage is you have a plugger that can match the
body there. Yeah.
So we'll see this as this plays out. You can see Sammer still sees that shallow cross from his receiver immediately. And so he makes that signal. You can see quite clearly he's pointing, and you've got Bobby Wagner in the middle of the field playing that plug coverage. He's going to then drive down and take away that shallow cross, just like we saw in that Dallas play a minute ago, where the linebacker drove down and took away that shallow cross with inside leverage. So that means Lattimore can then peel off, and he can help cover this crossing route from the tight end. So you can see, I think it is Quan Martin. It was initially matching this tight end. And so at this point, it looks like it's a bracket. But then Quan Martin can kind of peel off and replace Wagner as this plugger, because he can see Lattimore is there to pick up that crossing route. And yeah, I did draw that. So yeah, you can see Wagner's there ready to take on that shallow cross. You can see Quan now can become the plugger, and you can see Lattimore can take on the tight end. So these three players have all changed their assignments in the play. They're matching their coverage, but it leads to good coverage across the board, and then they take a shot outside instead, and he makes a nice catch. But we'll ignore that. The point was you see really good match coverage. You can see the communication from Lattimore telling Wagner, okay, you take that shallow cross, I'll pick up this one. And then suddenly you get the safety in the middle, peels off and becomes the new plugger, and you get good coverage across the board against both those routes. So it's just an example of match coverage of that. They were reintroducing that once I don't know, I've got all three angles of it, but they were reintroducing that to their coverage arsenal, if you will, at the end of last year, once they got us kind of settled secondary.
Couple comments real quick, Mark, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. Finish up your thought. I was going to say, dangerous world to have Jameson Williams running across Bobby Wagner's face. That's not necessarily the most, things happen in coverage. I'm just joking there. My question, though, with Lattimore, I guess I know we're kind of focusing on Amos today, but Lattimore, was it technique? Was it injuries? Like, he just seemed like he seemed like he was communicating well. It seemed like he was in the right position there. So, like, there's some redeeming qualities with him. You want him to bounce back. But in your opinion, do you have any like what happened last year? Like when he had some breakdowns of coverages?
The ones he really struggled with was if he was just playing straight man to man. And it was especially against like AJ Brown did a real good number on him. And So it was just if he was playing man to man and trying to be super physical. I don't know whether there was kind of a he was in his first game or first few games back
Emotional a little
after
bit.
injury, and
Hmm.
he was kind of trying to play catch up a little bit and trying to, I don't know, play that kind of mentality, and he didn't. He just wasn't in rhythm as he had been.
Hmm.
I can't really tell you about that, whether he was where he was with that. He just kind of struggled man to man. But you saw, like there, he did a really nice job with the passing off the man match stuff that they did.
Hmm.
He was doing really well when they played zone. He did fine. It was just if he tried to play man to man, he had his struggles against the kind of bigger physical guys like an AJ Brown that he couldn't just out physical. So that was where he struggled, and we'll just have to wait and see kind of where he's at, whether the full off season of being healthy and understanding
with the defense,
and all that kind of stuff. You obviously hope that he comes back with and gets back to the kind of player he was, where he can play that physical press coverage against those receivers and come off better. But well, time will just tell on that. It's hard to say, because it could be a sign that he's declining in that aspect of his game, but at the same time, there's enough other factors that it could have been those, like, as I said, coming off the injury, new team, new city, new teammates, new scheme, new calls. So there's a lot that could have gone on there, and it's impossible to say from the outside exactly what it is. Obviously, they're sticking with him, so they think it's just those external factors, and with a full off season of being healthy, he should be back to himself. Hopefully, he will be, but time will tell, I guess. So yeah, that was them using some sort of match coverage in the playoffs last year. It shows that that's kind of where I think they want to get to once they have a settled secondary and a group of guys they can trust to execute those match coverages. And I thought I'd finish just by showing that this is something that Amos is very capable of doing as well. And I showed a few clips of it last week when we did the pre-draft show, but this is a different one, and just one final example. So again, it's one of those when he's isolated to the outside and you've got this receiver running that shallow cross. That's a really, really hard route to cover for a corner on the outside, because you're out leveraged instantly, and then you're always just playing catch up. And if you're faster than the receiver, then great, you can play catch up. But more often than not, they're about the same speed as you, and it's really hard to catch that route up. So instead of having him try to catch up and not necessarily being able to, they play the kind of match coverage that we just talked about, where this tight end motions across and he turns his route into a wheel route, and Amos passes off that shallow cross inside and instantly picks up this one, and it happens really quick. That's the important thing about this play, is that this guy goes in motion, and before he's even really set, the snap happens and they're suddenly crossing over, and Amos is really quick to pick it up. So I'm just going to let it run rather than pausing, and you can see just how quick he picks that up instantly. And yeah, the receiver gets that catch on that shallow cross, but it's better that the receiver gets the catch on the shallow cross where he had two guys that should have been in a position to make a stop, than this tight end run up the seam with nobody covering him, or a linebacker trying to trail him and giving up a huge pass. So if I just wind this back, and now I can run it through. You saw it real time just how quick it was. The tight end just getting set, and it happens so quick, and he passes off so quickly. You can see as soon as that receiver starts working inside, he opens inside, he looks to the tight end that's releasing towards him, and he instantly passes that up, gets physical with the tight end, gets on top of the route, stops him from just bursting away from him,
Great play.
and runs down the field with him. And you can see he's passed that off. And again, you've got two guys inside that should be able to make this stop on this shallow cross quickly. They don't, because they mess up their part of it. But for Amos's part of it, and that is kind of the risk that does come with match coverage, is if these underneath guys aren't athletic enough or aren't quick enough to recognize where the threats are, then, and you can see this guy's kind of distracted by the running back working outside as well, so that doesn't help him. So that is the kind of downside of match coverages, is that there's a lot to deal with and process mentally in a short period of time. As I say, that was super quick, but from Amos's perspective, he was super quick in picking that up, and is mentally quick enough to pick up those different kind of match coverages. and he did his part well, despite these guys not necessarily doing their part well.
And Mark, quick question for you. Is it safe to say that the NFL, most teams play match coverage and man match and things of that nature because it's just so athletic, right? You can't just, I mean, sometimes you can travel with a guy, but it just seems like it's more logical to have these transitions and these switches.
It's becoming more and more common, and you see it quite a lot built into different coverages, like different zone coverages. You see it a lot in quarters, and that's kind of been the transition to it. You've seen more like quarters match coverages where you have 4 deep defenders and they have more time to read those routes. You don't often see it quite done like that, where it's quite so close to the line of scrimmage and quite so quick. You see it a lot more against like kind of stacked and bunch sets where you quite often hear what's called a banjo call, where you see 2 corners are, one guy's playing inside, one guy's playing outside, and you've got 2 receivers stacked, and they'll play whatever release comes first towards their leverage. So that's where you'll see it more in the NFL, and it's becoming more and more prominent as it's become more prominent in college. And if you have the guys that mentally can process all that information quickly, then it's a really good coverage. It's kind of the best of both worlds. You can play zone and man and match at the same time. But it's something that has a lot of downside, and we saw at the start of last year in that Bucks game where they tried to play some of this match stuff, and like St. Juice really struggled with it. Sam Still in his first game struggled with it. Forbes really struggled with it. So they were all kind of, none of them were on the same page, and if one guy's not on the same page, it's huge breakdowns and can be huge plays. So
real quick follow-up. So it's safe to assume that Amos was instructed to do this, right? It wasn't I guess there is an instinct that goes involved, but like they're taught to do the man switch and at Ole Miss. We're trying to get at. Okay.
Yeah, no, that wasn't him freelancing. That wasn't him going, I can't stay with that shallow, I'm picking up this route instead. No, that would be a prearranged part of the coverage where he probably would have made a call as that was happening. He probably would have shouted like under, or yours or mine or something like that to the guys inside to let them know that, hey, you're taking this shallow cross, this guy is coming in underneath to you guys, I'm taking this route instead, and you pass it off that way. So that would have been fully instructed. So but yeah, I think that was the last clip I had. So I think that was kind of what I was trying to show throughout this whole show, is that he's such a versatile defender. He can do just about anything you want him to do. As I said, if you want him to be that physical press man coverage profile kind of guy, he can do that. He's got that size, that length, that physicality, that if you want to do that, he can do that. But if you want to do a little bit more, if you want to play some zone, if you want to play the old Seahawks cover 3, he's as we saw, he can be that physical press guy while still playing within the structure of cover 3. If you want to just play normal spot dropping zone, he has really good instincts in those. If you want to play kind of quarters, we saw that rep where he nearly had that interception, just couldn't keep his feet in bounds. He can do that. He's got great instincts for that. And if you want to do the kind of off coverage, off man coverage, where you're playing with vision of both the receiver and the quarterback, and you're driving aggressively on anything underneath. We saw that he could do that, and that was kind of how Quinn and Witt had their DBs playing in Dallas most recently. And then if you want to get into the kind of more advanced match stuff, he's capable of that as well. So I think he's a really good fit. He'd be a really good fit for anyone because he's so versatile and he can go in so many different directions. He can play so many different coverages to a high level. And I think whatever way Washington wants to go with him, they can. But I think he just provides a lot of flexibility to the defense. So if they want to try to go, as I say, aggressive man coverage, or they want to play man match stuff like they were late in Dallas, then I think they can do that. And I think you get 3 guys in Sam Still and Lattimore and Amos that are all capable of doing that. And so I think that's kind of the direction they'll start. But as we talked about, if Lattimore has some struggles or gets injured or whatever, they have the flexibility of going, actually, we'll stick Sam Still back outside. We'll put Igbenogade or Jones in the slot, and we'll keep Amos outside on the other side. Maybe we don't trust them in man coverage quite so much. We might want to play a little bit more zone to protect them a little bit. You can do that as well. And he provides great flexibility. So I really like the pick. I think I said a few weeks ago that I'm not sure I see Amos ever becoming an
High
elite,
upside.
like number one corner.
Mhm.
Maybe I'm wrong. Hopefully I'm wrong. I'd love for him to become that. But I think what he will be is a super sound number two corner that can play so many different coverages that gives you so much flexibility to do kind of whatever you want schematically. You know that whatever you're going to call, he's going to be reliable and able to do it. So, yeah, I really like the pick. I think it's great value at 61, and I think he's a really good fit.
Absolutely. So my initial takeaway, I'm happy that Dan Quinn, when he was back in Dallas, when he had that high, like that turnover machine where there are turnovers and bunches with the defensive backs over in Dallas, he had his share of cornerbacks. He's hand selected them. It's nice that he picked Mike Sanders so last year. He has Trey Amos this year. He's basically building up a defensive back room to kind of build something that he wants. So something that matches what he likes to do. My follow-up question, shout out to our good friend Nick Ackbridge. We always kind of joke with him saying negative Nick, right? I want to be objective, right? So I'm kind of curious. This Trey Amos film was fantastic. It seemed like he's very versatile, large physical presence. My question would be, what are some of his flaws? Like what prevents him from potentially being that elite number one you keep talking about?
Yeah, so one of the things we talked about early was when he was playing press coverage. I think his press technique needs some work. We kind of went over that a little bit earlier, where he's not patient at the line of scrimmage. He's kind of a little bit anxious to kind of get his hands on guys quite early, and that can lead to his feet not being in the best position and in not being patient enough. And if you do that in the NFL against the best receivers, if you're just lunging at them, they will quite quickly kind of dip and get around you, and then you're getting burned and you're trying to play catch up. And Amos is a good athlete, but he's not like an elite athlete. He's not got like 4.3 speed, so he's not gonna. If you get a burner on the outside that is able to avoid that physical jam, he'll get down that sideline quickly, and Amos won't be able to catch up. So that would be one area that I would look to improve, and I think they will. I think that's something Joe Witt and Dan Quinn teach really well. Certainly Witt has a long history of teaching corners, and Jason Simmons as well, the pass game coordinator, has a history teaching corners as well. So I think that's something they will work on with him, is being a little bit more patient with his feet at the line of scrimmage. But otherwise, I think he's just such a well-rounded player. I don't think he has too many faults. I just think, when you talk about the elite of the elite corners, you're talking about guys that are super strong in press, that can just eliminate the number one receiver of the opposing offense. He's not that, certainly not yet. And as I say, hopefully he can develop into that. I have my doubts if he ever will get to that level, but I don't think you need him to be. I think if he's a super solid number two corner that is flexible in a lot of different schemes and plays them all to kind of a B plus level, you're getting a really, really good player, and someone that should be here for a long time.
And then Mark, last one, I know you have to run. That's fair analysis. I think I'm glad you're being objective and glad you're not. He's going to be a superstar. It's good to be objective. We're going to break things down. My last question to you is: we saw that he does have that physicality component. He is pretty strong. Did you see any potential or any red flags, orange flags in regard to being too physical or too handsy? Because I did see some sort of like physical contact downfield.
Yeah, no, I mean that's something that a lot of college defenders have to deal with when they switch to the NFL.
Okay.
And the NFL can be odd with how they deal with that. Sometimes they're really picky and call every kind of contact. Sometimes they let a lot of it go. So I guess you kind of have to know your refs every week. But the rules are slightly different. Obviously, in the NFL, it's within 5 yards of contact. I believe in college, it's you're allowed contact until the ball's in the air or something like that.
Interesting. I didn't realize that. Okay.
Yeah, so I think there's slightly different rules, and he has to adjust that to that. But again, it can be quite different, and you see quite a lot of corners like Lattimore can be quite physical even beyond that 5 yards down the field. So there's always some sort of contact, and it's just whether the judge on the day decides whether it's a foul or not. I don't think he's overly handsy. You see a lot of corners that get really grabby at the top of routes. He's not that, because he generally does a pretty good job of staying on top of routes, so he doesn't need to grab on and stop them from beating him. So that's not really his game. He's not someone that gets overly handsy. That's something that kind of Sanders still struggled with in college, because he was converted from a wide receiver. He would sometimes, when he played top down, when he played off coverage and he played top down at everything was in front of him. He could just drive and attack those. But when those routes got up close to him and started to break either side of him, that's when he could get a little bit handsy trying to keep up with guys. And that's kind of natural when you're new to the position, and he wasn't like that as much this year. But no, that wasn't something that Amos struggled with. So I think he'll transition pretty well there.
Got it. Mark, thank you. You did a great job breaking it down. Like I said before, I love your vision for the film breakdown. I love how you apply it to the Dallas Cowboys or the Washington Commanders. Dan Quinn's scheme is it's a great learning tool. I learned a lot today. I'm sure our viewers did as well. Speaking of viewers, we had 755 people watching us live today on a Saturday morning or Saturday afternoon if you're in Europe. So you definitely have that perspective there. So thank you for joining us. We're going to close our show down. I just want to give a shout out to Mark again. Follow him on X at Mark Bullock NFL. His name is right there on our screen. He has his Substack. You can definitely subscribe and get some good content there. Multiple times a week, he puts out great film work and great content there. I'm George Carmi at GCarmi21 on X. Follow us on Big Doug and Carmi Show on YouTube. I think next week, Mark, we're going to probably we'll find a day for it, but we'll get Lane. We'll be looking at our Virginia Tech 4th round wide receiver, kind of break him down, see where he fits in the offense. So cool. Yep, everybody, have a great weekend. Take care. See you guys soon.